everyone. Welcome back to the Heal with Kat podcast. My name is Kat. I am your host, and welcome to this week's episode, a very interesting episode about negative self-talk. And my guest this week, Betsy Holmberg, is a psychotherapist and the author of Unkind Mind, a book specializing in negative self-talk. And this was a really fun conversation despite the topic. And I'll be honest with you, I was really nervous about what we were going to talk about in this episode. Of course, I always have my foundational questions, and I always know that there's a potential path of where the conversation is going to go. But Betsy really just brought so much light and so much joy and so much knowledge and information to a topic that I was a little intimidated by. And the truth is I struggle with negative self-talk more than I care to admit, especially with being diagnosed with OCD when I was 15 and just really struggling with rumination of negative talk in my brain. I never really understood the neuroscience behind negative self-talk. And after this episode, I feel like I really am rooted in the understanding of it. And my favorite part of the whole episode, we talk about the connection between the gut and the heart and the brain and how we can be more heart-centered and move from the brain into the heart and how the gut affects all of this. So if you've been following my journey for a while, you know that I've had some major gut issues over the last couple of years, and I just feel more enlightened, and I hope that you do too. And if negative self-talk is a sensitive topic for you, this is actually a really fun conversation, and I think you'll feel better after it. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and review the podcast, and let me know if you're loving these topics where we meet the intersection between psychology and spirituality, which we definitely go into today as well. And let me know what you want to hear more of on the Heal with Kat podcast. I'm off of Podmatch now, so I'm raw dogging it in the podcast universe. If you know somebody who would be great for the podcast, a great guest, or even just a topic, and we can do some research on our end, finding someone who is an expert in that thing, let me know below, because this is a space for you guys. I do this for you. And also, I like to learn too, but the Heal with Kat community, this podcast, it's all about evolving and growing together. So let me know what you guys want. All right. Let's get into this week's episode. Everyone, please help me welcome Betsy Holmberg, psychologist and author of Unkind Mind, specializing in negative self-talk, to the Heal with Kat podcast. Betsy, thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to be here, Kat.
We were just chatting a little bit before the episode and really just talking about, what this conversation was going to be like. And, I'm really excited to dive into the idea of negative self-talk because I think it's something that so many people can relate to. And a lot of people don't have the words or the understanding of where it comes from. Why do we do it? Why is it this constant voice that's just always in the back of our head? What is it protecting us from? At least I'm projecting already onto the episode what I think negative self-talk comes from. But before we dive into this incredible topic, I would love to know a little bit more about your story, what brought you into writing this book, and what you do now.
Yeah, so I have always been an overthinker. I think a lot of us can think of that with just, when you're young, you always look at the world from kind of the outside in, and it's, what does my body need to look like? What clothes do I need to be wearing? What's the right career for me to get? So I've always had that kind of mentality. But where this book really came from was my husband left me when my son was 15 months old. And, so my son was just starting to walk and my husband is out the door. And it was a very tough time. It was 2 years of a divorce. Family court system is no joke. That'll, rip you in two. And so that was really hard. And I got depressed and I went on antidepressants and my family came close to me and we got through. But it was 3 years later and we're all settled and the dust has even settled. And I'm like, okay, I should be healed now. So I'm like, I'm going to go off my antidepressants. And I would start to try to titrate off. And every single time this negative self-talk came raging back. And it was nasty. It was like, you're not giving your son a good enough life. You can't do this. Everyone's judging you because someone left you. What's wrong with you? Pretty much whenever I heard it, I was like, oh my God, I'm broken. Like I'm now broken for the rest of my life. Like I was a normal person going all along and then this happened and now I'm in shatters. And I'm like, this just sucks. And so I'm a therapist. I'm an EMDR therapist. I've learned DBT. I've learned CBT. I know all the stuff. And I'm like, none of that is going to help me with this. Like I could go in and talk some therapist's ear off and be like, oh, I'm insecure, but like, they're not going to really solve this and heal this for me. So I thought, crap, if this is who I am now, why don't I just go and at least understand what's going on in my brain? And that literature absolutely blew my mind. And I felt healed immediately. Like, oh, wait, this is what this is. And I was able to like just let it go in a way I feel like traditional therapy often doesn't help us do. I mean, I'm a major introvert. I like walking my dog. I like baking. Like, this is not like normal for me, but I thought, shit, this idea is so important. And like, if I could heal this much, I bet it can heal others. And so now I'm out there bringing this idea to the world.
Oh my gosh, I want to touch on something that you alluded to, this idea that talk therapy only does so much and there's so much more behind the scenes that we need to do. As a psychotherapist, tell us a little bit more about that, because I've actually never heard that from the psychotherapy perspective. It's only me as somebody who like works kind of within that field, but not like you do.
Well, to me, it's that when you go in for therapy, there's so much of it that is you want it to be client led and you want it to be client driven. So like they're coming up with their insights and they're producing it. But a lot of time, just the even process of it, it's like, so tell me, what are you thinking right now? And we'll get into the science, because what you're thinking is not actually who you are. And we need to disconnect those two pieces and see it for what it is and get rid of it. And so if you're in therapy every week and it's like, what are you thinking? How are you feeling? And you're sitting there mired in it all the time, like that's not healing. There's some forms of therapy that are phenomenal, like EMDR is incredible for trauma. Love it. And if you connect with CBT, great. But a lot of people don't. And I'm someone who hasn't really connected that well with therapy, even though I am a therapist. So, it's not uncommon for it not to feel like it's healing.
I just was listening to Theo Von and Dr. Gabor Mate before we jumped on the recording here. And Dr. Gabor Mate was talking about this book. It's called Determined, by this guy named Richard Sapolsky. He's like a neuroscientist at Stanford. And he wrote this book on the idea that free will and choice is not actually a real concept, because we're so predetermined based on all of these factors of our ancestral lineage, our environment we grew up in, the things that we hear, like all of these different components of like being a human, how much of who we are, like you said, is coming from something else rather than it being like our true and authentic self. But side note, what was it that made you want to become a psychotherapist then? Was it just to resolve some of the childhood stuff, or was it really a need to be a healer and to work in this space to help others?
I did my PhD young. I did it in my 20s. And so it was because I just loved human nature. And I loved like, why do we do what we do? And like, how can we feel better? And I thought those were like by far the most interesting questions in the world. And so that's where I went into that degree. I then went and did other stuff afterwards. I was like, I can't be a therapist when I'm 29 years old. Like it didn't feel right to me. So I went and did other things, but I'm trained as a therapist and I can practice therapy, if I so choose.
Well, I think a lot of people, I'm thinking of one person that I know in my life right now in mind who studied psychology in college for the specific purpose of wanting to understand human behavior. And I never studied psychology. I did fashion merchandise marketing. I was chasing some other dream, but I always had my hands in a true crime book or podcast or movie or show. Like I watched 48 Hours all the time growing up. Like I wanted to understand why people do what they do. And so I just think it's so beautiful for your story that it kind of led you on this path to then write this amazing book. So I would love for you to tell us about this book. Tell us like what it's here to help people do, all of the things, because I really want to get into it.
You got
Can you
it.
tell I'm somebody who's traumatized by my own personal negative thoughts?
We all are traumatized by our own thoughts. So you said it well in the beginning what negative self-talk is. We feel like know it because we all do it all day long and we're stuck here listening to it. So what the science shows is that we actually have two thought networks and it really feels like it's one, but it's not. It's two. The first one we'll talk about is our most sophisticated network. It's located on the outside of the brain. It's something that primates have. No other species has it. It's the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, and it connects to other areas as well. And this we call our central executive network. And these are the thoughts you choose to have. So when you focus your attention on something, if you are focused on this conversation, you're using your central executive network. But we have another network, and this is the thing, is there is a network more embedded in our brain, deeper in. It has links to our stress system, our amygdala, like it is linked in deep with things, and it's called the default mode network. And this thing runs when we're not using our central executive. You can think of them as an either or system. So you're either choosing to focus on something or you're listening to your DMN. And that's the thing that the neuroscience is wild about, is that this thing is automatic. And it was born in the times when we were hunter-gatherers, and it served an incredibly important evolutionary purpose. So it helped us identify what the norms and expectations were of our, 150 person clan that we lived in our entire life, And it was like, okay, this is what you have to do. This is how you have to act. This is what this customary. And it helped you stay within that. And the problem is nowadays it's like glitching because we have too many clans and we're too many expectations. Everywhere we go, there's something of like, you should be doing this. You should be looking like this. And our DMN sees that and then says it back to us. And so it's also like, you can tell it's evolutionarily old too, because it talks to us like an overbearing parent. It's like, no, don't do that. No, you could get hurt. No, like, play small. It's easier. It's very fearful. So this is our fear system. And this is our system that thinks it's helping us stay safe and secure. So that's why it feels important to listen to. But at the end of the day, they're automatic thoughts and they're survivalist and they're not meant for this time. They're not helping us at all. And if we can separate from it, like that's the biggest thing in the world. If we can be like, oh, that's my DMN, because that's, I think, has so many, how we get into mental health situations. And this is also shown in the literature. When this area gets strong and prominent in our brains, that's major depressive disorder. Those are the major anxiety disorders. OCD is one where, you're thinking all the time about repetitive actions. ADHD, the thoughts are scattered. So the DMN is function critical in the development and the persistence of mental health situations. And probably the first step then we all can take for our well-being is to separate from this voice, not believe it, not make meaning from what it's saying, like, oh, I'm so insecure, I must suck, oh, I'm worthless. No, we don't make meaning of it. And we're like, oh, that's my DMN. And we put it in a loincloth and we put it back in the cave, That's where it belongs.
Oh my God, our DMN sounds like a jar of like sourdough starter that's gonna freaking explode because it's too full. And it makes me think, no wonder at this age, at 34, I want to homestead. I want to live out on property with no distractions. Once I've started healing like the deeper rooted traumas in the last couple of years of my life, and like I've been doing EMDR, I'm about to start brain spotting and like really looking at some of these really deep things. No wonder I want to disappear because it feels like my brain is just on all the time. It's just giving me feedback. And I'm like, everything needs to stop because my brain is going to explode. And it's interesting because what then is reflected back to me when you say this is this where control issues come from? Like I have OCD, this need to like create order, this insane amount of order in my life from ancestral chaos, but also like nuclear and familial chaos as well. So like what are the connections to control with the DMN?
The DMN feels that if you can control it all, you will be okay.
Okay.
And I think the pisser of this thing is that the second you control it, so like the second you clean the bathroom or you like straighten the towels or whatever it is you feel, it'll then move on to the next thing. Because what it is it's like a radar. So it's constantly scanning for the next threat. And so if you finish the first threat, it doesn't care. It's not going to give you a pat on the back. It's going to say, oh, wait, what about this one now? Because it's constantly signaling. And like, that's what makes it so hard.
Attacked.
And I think what's interesting for your situation, because guys, I'm a huge fan of this podcast too, is you've had all your gut trouble, right? And gut has major pathways. So we have our gut brain, our enteric nervous system, and this connects to the DMN. So this is why we get our IBS and our SIBO and all of these things. The central executive network, the one we're choosing to use our thoughts, that actually connects to a heart brain. We have all these neurons that surround our heart that are their own independent brain, which is incredible. And it keeps our heart beating and everything, but it also connects to things that we care about. It corresponds to like what we love and probably more who we are in our soul. And that is connects to our CEN. So we have to get out of our tummies and, we need to get into our hearts. And that helps a lot.
Oh, I am going to cry. That was beautiful. Well, but it's so true because I did a family constellation therapy session a few months ago on my gut issues. And my friend Julie, who does all my FCTs, she offered me this thought. And I have thought about it almost every day since because my gut issues are probably still the one lingering thing after everything else has kind of been healing. And she said, your power center is not your gut. It's your heart. And the less you use your heart, the more you're going to rely on your gut. And then you're going to overwork it. It's not meant to be the decision maker. It's not meant to predict outcomes. It's not meant to hold your stress. It's not meant to be, your decision making part of your body. That's your heart. Your heart is your compass. And so every time that I start having gut issues, which I'm actually having the last week because I had Olipop and it has chicory root in it. And chicory root can be a horrible trigger for gut issues. Anyways, I start thinking about that. Okay, I've got a lot of stuff going on in my gut right now. Where can I start being in my heart? Okay, and how do I do that? And then I have my ways. So it's just so beautiful that you have the science to back up also what I like, the spiritual part of it, which is where do we use our power? Where is that energy coming from?
And this is where I've been so interested hearing about your work because we think of our ancestral healing and we think that so many of the messages that our DMN gets is from our families and our families are hearing from their family members. So there is this ancestral pass down of DMN fears, worries, insecurities, requirements, who you have to be in the world. You have to be a doctor. You have to be a lawyer. And however is the right way to heal it, if we can heal these messages we get from our families and from our lineage, but also from society, the healthier and then more authentic we can be to who we truly are underneath all this crap,
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's why I liked the idea of the book Determined that I brought up earlier because I'm like, dang, I want to read that now because all of my work in FCT is to help people unlayer what they're carrying so they can really discover like who is underneath that because that was my experience with it. Is the DMN technically the subconscious or is it all interconnected? Is it all the same? Like when we say your subconscious is running the show, is it the DMN?
It's such a good, I've thought this question over and over. I'm like, down with the self. I don't think there is a subconscious. Like we talk about it because we don't know what else it was. We didn't know, we didn't have the science. So it's like, oh, we'll just call it that and make it sound really magical. And I mean, I would say the subconscious, yes, could be considered the DMN. If you're letting it run, then that sounds like what it is. I think the subconscious could also be considered your nervous system and just the nervous system pathways of your freeze response, your fight flight response, and then your social engagement network, which is when we're happy and we're out and around and we're talking. Like that's our best part. And so this system, your nervous system is very aware of things happening and it will flare and it will put you in a fight or flight. And like you could call that your subconscious. But I think we're finally moving away from these terms like ego, subconscious, like everything that made it froofy. I think we're finally getting to the science of like what's actually happening.
Well, the science has never been more enlightening. And I think that now there's kind of this wave of people wanting to connect the physical and the spiritual together in a new way. I really believe that spirituality is now evolving into this place where spirituality is no longer reaching some top of the mountain and being able to say, I'm spiritual. It's more like I'm in my body. I'm processing my traumas. I'm letting go or surrendering and healing and witnessing the things that have repressed me for so long. And underneath that, I'm discovering who I truly am. Like, I feel like that's spirituality these days. For a long time, I thought ego was a really bad thing. And I did anything in my power to not work with ego energy. And then this friend of mine said, well, your ego is what helps you do math and drive a car and helps you make a decision if, an apple at the grocery store is moldy or if it's not moldy. It's kind of that part of your brain that just gives you a little bit more logic. But why do we have to deem it as bad? And this is a long story, but I was in a healing session with someone and it was like an energy healing. And I told her that I had felt my ego like as almost like an entity standing near me. And she said, okay, well, like, let's just talk to it as if it's like a real being, and let's just see like what it wants. And it said to me, I need to be in your heart. I can't be outside of you anymore. Like I need you to integrate me. And so I just think like I share all of this in a very sporadic way, but to really come back to the point of we have so many different definitions for all these spiritual or human terms, but for me, I love the idea of the science behind it because it gives me something true to hold on to. Like moving forward, when now that I know this about the DMN and the CEN, which you abbreviated as, I will know that when my OCD is really ramping up and I have this crazy thought that's coming through, then I can be like, oh, it's my ego, or what is it? Or it's like, no, it's just your survival brain. It's that part of you that's been programmed, and you can lean in and be like, okay, great. Thanks for offering that. We're going to go in this direction, you know?
Totally. I mean, when I started doing this, I thought, okay, I'm going to be floating around a grocery store. I'm going to be like a Zen monk. Like this is going to be the most amazing thing. And so I had a bad night's sleep, and I had like a little funky situation with my kid. He had some stuff at school. We processed it. And the next day I could not shut my DMN up. And I was like, what is going on? Like, how can this be? And like, there are times in our life, especially for stressed, like, you know how in a stress response, your digestion stops, reproduction stops, like it centers in on the parts that are the most important for survival. Well, the brain shuts off your CEN. And of course, it lets the DMN go because that's your survival brain. And so you are literally stuck listening to it. And it's going to happen if we're tired. It can happen if we're emotional. Like there are going to be times that we can't shut this thing up. And that's the time to we try to ignore it. We ignore a lot of things in life. You know, it's pretty easy to ignore noises on the street and things like that. And there's a place where now that we know what this is, we can say, you know, I'm just not going to listen to it. Like I'm not going to attached to any of those thoughts. I'm not going to say, yes, I am insecure, or yes, I do need to be worried about that. No, I'm going to hear it. I mean, there have been times I've been listening to, I'm like, dang, you nasty. Like, why are you going that far? But I'm not owning it, you know, anymore. And that is huge. One thing I want to add too, which is so cool on all the science stuff, is like meditation. We're all supposed to be meditating, right? And like, I love guided meditations, but I don't know. I just don't want to sit in silence. Well, all meditation is moving into your CEN. So listen to how it goes. They're like, okay, just let your thoughts float by. Don't attach to your thoughts, AKA don't listen to the DD, right? And then they're like, focus on your breath. Focus on a chant, you know, focus on the stillness. That focus is activating your CEN. So all meditation is turning off the DMN and turning on the CEN. And why it's hard is because we have identified with this DMN. We think it's us. So we're like, how can I turn it off? It's me. Now that if you know this side of the brain, you can say, oh, I can turn off the DMN. That little shitter, like, fine, I can turn it off and I can focus on my breath. Or you can focus on something that you love that speaks to your heart, to our conversation earlier, that connects more with your authentic self. And then that is as much meditation as sitting on a yoga mat cross-legged, which my lower back can't do anymore.
Well, so then I guess that really brings up the question of, besides meditation, what are the other ways you can offer us to work with our DMN and move more into the CEN or the heart? Hey everyone, it's Kat from the podcast with a little break in today's episode to share with you a really exciting offering I have called the Age Mapping 3-Day Mini Course. In just 3 days, we'll uncover the stories hidden in your family's past. By mapping the ages of key moments of trauma within your lineage, you'll begin to see how those moments could still be influencing your life today at those same ages. On day 1, you'll experience my powerful ancestral subconscious meditation. On day 2, we'll dive into the age mapping exercise. And lastly, on day 3, you'll geek out with me on the topic of epigenetics, which can explain the way that trauma is passed down generation after generation. The entire workshop is only $35. Are you ready to dive into your ancestral stories and heal for good? Go to katdow.com/agemap or visit the link in the show notes below. Your transformation starts with understanding your past right now.
Okay, so the main thing is to focus your attention. I guess there are a few steps. Number 1 is to recognize it, identify it. Some people like to anthropomorphize it. They like to give it a name. They like to create an image of who this thing is. Other people just call it their DMN. You know, you be you. Second is to then I recognize when it's going. So it's either like I will set an alarm on my phone once an hour. I'm going to ping it and just be like, is my DMN going? Or other people are just like, oh, I hear it. It's happening. Okay, let me try to turn it off. Then third, it's to just shift your attention to something else. So for me, I like to just stare out the window and try to really focus on like, what color is the sky? What are the colors of the leaves? What does the dappling look like? I try to get very much into nature works for me. So I go into that. Other people like to go into the body. Like, what does my breathing feels like? How, should I breathe more? What does my heart feel like right now? Or you could go do something. So some people, like I have a friend who feels this playing tennis. She loves tennis. It shuts her mind off and she moves around. She focuses on the tennis ball. And that's fabulous. I have two friends at the dog park this morning. They were talking about an art class they're taking and they're starting to love art and they're taking the time to do it, which is great. I mean, I feel like especially as women, we're like, no, we shouldn't have time for our hobbies. No, we shouldn't have hobbies. They're expensive. They take away from everyone else in our life. Like, no, our hobbies are what connect us to who we are and connect us to this better part of our brain that make us healthier. So we need to be prioritizing our joy and what we love to do as a way to stay healthy and well.
That I just started getting into Zumba and Dance Jam, which I danced for like 10 years, but I put it on the back burner for most of my 20s. Then I started having dance parties at home alone. And finally I was like, I need to stop doing the same moves over and over again and change up the music. So I started going to Zumba and man, I really feel like I'm in my CEN, I'm in my heart when I do that because I don't care what I look like. I'm not there for anybody else. I'm there for me. Like, people get really competitive in Zumba and they're like, I'm like, you do you. I'm just here to like let myself regenerate my energy. I'm here to like be in me. And so I love that you offer that it can be anything for anyone, that there's no really like one way. But what I am noticing that you're saying is more like there's such an important piece of mindfulness when it comes to reconnecting with the CEN and moving out of the DMN. I want to kind of like backtrack a little bit. With this, I really love Ancestral, talking about the topic of ancestral stuff. And you mentioned something a lot earlier about the concept of the tribal brain and the connection between the default mode network and how it influences our patterns and all of that. Is there anything else you can share with us about more of that tribal connection?
Well, it's the idea of, and this is where ancestral healing is so helpful, as is understanding our families, because when you see what the constraints were that your parents were under and what was the priority for them, like, for example, in my family, my mother was raised to get married. That was the only thing that was important, was for her to get married. And that shifted a lot of what the clan requirements were for her. But then she modified them for me. But knowing kind of where our family members' DMNs are is really helpful to our healing because we care about our families and we don't want to let our families down. But how much of what their expectations are based on their DMNs and their fears and insecurities versus reality and what's best for us. And that's a very healing distinction to make.
Well, I would assume that the DMN is connected to epigenetics in some component where we just inherit the nervous system of our family members. I mean, epigenetics is really nurture and nature, but I would assume there's a component to that as well.
And I think these are very nurture and nature because if we hear someone caring about something, then our DMNs put that in and then we'll say that back to us. And then suddenly we start caring about it. And then we could potentially pass that on to our child. And it might not be something that matters that much. I mean, like one of the things that I heard was that, people had to get made up to go out to the post office. Like, you have to put your lipstick on. Like that was a thing. And, no.
You should see how I go to the post office.
I mean, nowadays, luckily, we don't have to do any of that. But, that was something that was like one of those messages I heard as a kid that nowadays is ridiculous. Yeah. But being able to distinguish what those are is really helpful.
How would someone know the difference between when they're in their DMN and when they've shifted into the CEN? Is that kind of a relationship that somebody needs to build within themselves over time to kind of get to know those parts, or are there precursors that people can look out for?
A big thing to look out for is if you hear the thoughts stop, if you hear your inner monologue stop. So when it goes peaceful, when it goes silent, then you've made that switch. And like, that's the biggest one. And there'll be times you'll be trying to focus on something, but you'll still hear your inner monologue going. And then you're not actually in your CEN, or you're in your DMN. And so I think that's where it's helpful, those times when you are really focused on something. You hear everything goes quiet except for what you're doing. People get this in flow states a lot where they lose sense of time. And so any practice that gets you into the present moment and gets you into that stillness, like, yes, that's your CEN and not your DMN anymore.
Are there potential positives to using your DMN? Can it be useful for anything? Is there a light in the DMN, or is it mostly just trying to keep you down?
I want to say no, because so far it feels to me like it really just is keeping you down. But there is something that has been like tickling me for a long time and being in this work, is that the thing I could not figure out were people's aha moments. Because you know how aha moments are automatic?
Yeah.
And I thought that has to be the DMN, but this thing is so dumb and mean most of the time. How is this possible? So there are people within the creativity literature that are working on this. And what they've identified is that an aha thought actually does come in from the DMN. But what happens is it's immediately pulled into the CEN and you focus on it. So it's something that gets taken and like shifted over to the CEN. So yes, it can create it, but where you actually work on it and understand it and then absorb it for yourself does happen in the C.
Something I always think about when I talk to anyone on the podcast who has involvement with neuroscience and psychology is like, when I'm channeling and doing mediumship, like I want to understand my brain more. Because what you're describing, when I'm channeling or like in mediumship, I definitely feel like there's multiple parts of me that are on. It's like I do feel like I'm in my CEN because I'm in a flow and I never really remember what I say when I channel because it's so present. But I also know that my brain is taking in information, it's filtering it, it's figuring out how to communicate it because I'm not being told words. I'm being shown, and it's the weirdest experience. It's like I'm being shown pictures and shown felt feelings. Like there's so many things I'm filtering through that, and I'm still trying to be like this heart-centered person. Like I just always am so curious. Like I want someone to do like brain scanning on me when I'm like channeling because I want to understand how I'm filtering all of this through my brain.
No, totally. There was an episode on Teresa Caputo where she did. Yeah, go back and find it.
I love her. I
love her. She's so fabulous. This was a long time ago. This was like at least a decade ago, but they put her in one of those caps and they watched her. I'm not sure if they saw the whole areas. I should look back and like look at the areas now that I know the brain so much better. And they showed she went into like a theta wave. And guys, like go back and see this. This is 10 years old information. I think it was like she went into like down to the delta waves or something as if she was asleep. And that's really interesting because what happens during sleep, like when the falling asleep process, the DMN has to uncouple. The areas that make up the DMN have to stop talking to each other so that we can truly relax and fall asleep, which is why if your brain is running and you're stressed and you're nervous and like you can't stop thinking, you're not falling asleep. Like that thing is keeping you up. And so part of me wonders is that brain state you go into that these networks uncouple so that your brain is more open and receptive to receiving information from the other side, from energy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm going to go on YouTube after this and look it up. I've always been so curious about that. Like what is happening? Oh my gosh. Now I'm like going on like a brain tangent about it. Well, it's interesting because when I go to sleep, I have no problem falling asleep. I read my Kindle before bed because it just helps me to fall asleep faster. I barely sometimes get through a page and I'll like pass out. But then sometimes I'll wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and I'll be like, yes, there's people talking to me. I hear voices. And actually you'll laugh at this because you do EMDR. But I attempted to do EMDR about 1.5 years ago. It was a recommendation from someone and it was this young guy in his probably my age, early 30s. He was newer in EMDR and he was ready to start taking on professional clients and he came highly recommended from the owner. So I sit down in the first session and we're going through all the questions, have you this and have you experienced that? And then he gets to this question and he goes, and have you ever heard voices in your head before? And I was like, oh shit. And I was like, well, so answer this. And I was like, because, sometimes I have my own imposter syndrome too. Like, I was raised in a very Catholic home, and like,
Yeah.
I was, like maybe I just know like what I do, it wouldn't be accepted. And, there's all that imposter stuff sometimes. So I'm like, well, actually, so like, do you believe in like mediums and psychics and like intuitives? And he was like, I'm open to it. And I was like, well, so like, yes, I hear voices, but I'm not schizophrenic. I like can channel your loved ones. And then he's like, yeah, that's fine. No worries. And then I literally left and I never went back because I was like, I don't know that I even feel like that was like I'm nervous about myself that now he thinks I'm like a crazy person. So when I was interviewing some people to do EMDR recently, the first thing they're like, so what do you want me to know? And I was like, no, first thing you need to know is like, I do hear voices, but I'm not schizophrenic. I'm a medium. Are you okay with that? And they're like, yeah, I see mediums myself. I'm like, great, we can work together. Like, because I need to know that they're not going to think I'm crazy because like, this things. Now you guys know all of the fucking dilemmas I go through. It's a gift. And it also is very interesting.
I hate that whole thing though, of like, I don't even know why they have to ask it. So they want to know if you're schizophrenic before you start treatment. And you're like, didn't you figure that out on the intake? Like, we probably don't need to be doing this in the middle of the thing. And don't we all hear voices? The DMN is a damn loud voice. Like, and we're not all talking about that as hearing voices. I don't know. Like, but that's my voice. I hate that.
I like where you're going with that. I also like the idea. I love parts work because I think that it really gave me permission to not beat myself up for being a horrible person, that I have certain thoughts that come from different things. Like, for example, for a while, I was experiencing triggers from like a 13-year-old version of me. And I didn't know that it was a 13-year-old version of me until it came up in an FCT session. And I was like, oh my God, when I get triggered in that situation, I go back to this 13-year-old version of me who does all the talking. I disappear. I don't know where I go. All of this great wisdom I have to share with everyone is fucking out the window. And I'm 13 years old and I want to rage against the machine. And I'm like really fucking pissed and angry. And so I like the idea of parts work because it really, I think in connection to the DMN, it sounds like it just gives the DMN permission to be heard, to be understood, to, because there's this concept within OCD work with rumination that instead of pushing away the thought, you actually lean into it and you kind of just give it space to be like, okay, what if that big fear like happened? Like what would happen? And then you kind of just like talk it out. And then I've noticed for myself that the DMN, or I called it the subconscious mind, would first lash out when I would lean into the idea of like, what if that happens? Like, no, like we're like the worst case scenario would come to my mind. And then once I was like, okay, and then what? Like, then, okay, like, what happens when you die, and that the worst case scenario is you die, like, RIP, like, where you're going, right? And so, like, for me, giving the DMN a voice almost softens the parts of us that actually just want to be seen and heard. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I think that's why parts work has taken off so much in the last like 10 years, is because like, I think we were all sick of sitting on couches and being like, what's wrong with you? And like, what are your thoughts? Like, what are you thinking that's dysfunctional this week, Betsy? Like, no, we didn't want to go there. We wanted to be able to separate from them and say, oh, this is this part of me, and this is my manager, and this is my firefighter, and this is myself. I think that's the other part of parts work that's so powerful, is it's that idea of connecting into the self, which is in the heart, which connects to the CEN. So it can separate us from these other areas that are not great for us. But, like, I think that we've all owned this stuff so long. I kind of think this is also part of being in an oppressive system, is that they're just like, well, it's your fault and you should be better off. And I think that we're living in an incredible time right now where we're suddenly identifying the oppressive systems. We're recognizing what it actually does. Gabor Mate's work is so cool with this, the whole myth of normal. There is no normal. And then we are all figuring our way out with what we've gotten. And often it's not great. And it's to be able to point at what's not great as opposed to pointing at ourselves and saying we're the thing that's wrong. none of us are wrong. We're all beautiful. We just have to connect into our beautiful part to feel it and experience it and know it for ourselves.
Beautifully said. And also, Dr. Gabor Mate was saying that as children, for survival mode, our brain has two choices. Our brain can either say, these humans and these adults are dumb and stupid. My environment is horrible. I hate all of them. But because we're so innocent and rooted in love as children, we don't automatically go there. The second option is to blame ourselves and to go, there's something wrong with me. This is why all of this stuff is happening. And he says that people will usually from childhood trauma evolve into one of two camps, where everyone is horrible and they don't trust anyone, or I'm horrible and I don't trust anyone because I'm a bad person, when that's not the case. And he was saying that babies are so, you can't have compassion and shame at the same time. Like where there is compassion, shame like gets to take a back seat. So I don't know. I was just because I was watching that episode before we started recording, I'm like, damn, there's a lot of through line between our conversation around that, but just how we end up learning how to beat ourselves up. And really, who are these voices in our head? Who are the ones that are speaking? Is it ancestral? Is it from this certain experience we haven't looked into or processed yet? Like, where is it coming from? So just such a fascinating conversation.
That whole development process is so hard in a way. I think it's the only way to say it, because like this DMN, it's not there when we're really, really young. And so we really are heart-centered, and you can see it in preschoolers. They're like, what's your favorite color? I love dinosaurs. I mean, their hearts and they're all the other emotions in the world because they haven't started figuring it out. So they're everything, but they really live from their hearts and in the present. And then in middle childhood, the DMN starts wiring together and it's fully baked in your teenage years. Whereas the CEN, it's there. It isn't fully baked until you're 30, 31. And so there's this period of time where, and it's not necessarily that it's not working. It's just that it's very easily overridden. The DMN can dominate in the teenage years. And I feel for myself as a teenager, I feel for all of us as teenagers, because this thing comes online and it suddenly starts criticizing us and telling we're not good enough and looking around at all the other kids in your class and thinking she's prettier, he's cooler, they're funnier, like that's smarter, I'm not going to get into a good college, whatever it is. And they think something changed in me, like I'm not normal, I'm not good. And they own that and they get insecure. And, we have a teenage mental health crisis. Well, a part of this is just this brain area coming online. And it must be such a shock. I mean, I kind of remember the shock of like 12 years old. I was like so confident and I felt great about myself. And now suddenly I feel like crap. And like, what happened to me? And we blame it on hormones. But the more we know about this and can share this with our kids to say, yeah, this voice sucks. And you're going to have it for the rest of your life. I'm so sorry. But it's also primitive. It's automatic. It is really primal. You don't need to worry about, try to ignore it. Try to stay focused on what you love and who you are, and screw this voice. And I feel like that could help a lot of our kids as they're going through this.
I remember being a teenager and just feeling like I didn't understand what was happening in my body, but I also knew that the adults around me could tell that something was different, and there wasn't a lot of support. It was a lot of teenagers, what are you going to do? They think they know everything. And I'm like, I'm really I have an eating disorder. I am super insecure. Everything I do is not good enough. I'm failing in school. I don't know what I want to do with, I have all these expectations. I don't know what to do with them. My brain is freaking out. I'm hypervigilant to everyone around me because there's so much chaos going on. I mean, it's just difficult enough to be a teenager. But I think that with people like you who are writing these amazing books, and for our society right now, I mean, I saw this quote that said that millennial generation is the first generation of parents who are exhausted, not from being parents, but from doing inner work while being parents. We're the first generation to do our work and be a parent, and we're exhausted by it, Meanwhile, our previous generations were just exhausted by other things, right? Like they had their own level of exhaustion. So I just think like if parents today can just remember that your kid is also having a hard time as you having a hard time, and they're not trying to make your life worse, they're just learning how to grow at the same time as you. I would have appreciated a little bit of compassion growing up as a teenager. I would have appreciated someone looking at me and going, something's wrong. Are you okay? No one asked me if I was okay. I just had to figure it out on my own. So it makes me feel for, like you said, a lot of the mental health crisis going on with teenagers right now. It's already hard enough to be a human, let alone all of these developmental stages.
And then all of the pressures that are on them that as adults we don't have. Like, yes, we have to keep a job. I know everyone's like, oh, adult pressures are big. Like every test matters, every sports team matters. Like there's so many opportunities to get judged, to get rejected, to like, then you have to apply to college. I mean, it is so much pressure. And then we sit there and say, oh, teenagers. Like, I mean, and so then they have that bad feeling. No one's walking around being like, oh, adults, they suck. I mean, and if I did that, we'd be like, hey, like, no, we don't suck. And so I don't know. I just feel like I want to fly a teenage banner and be like, here's to the teenagers and what they're living through, because it's a lot. And we should own that.
I feel like your book could be so helpful for teenagers to understand too.
Yeah.
Like just the idea of like, these thoughts that you're having are not you. They're this part of your brain that's trying to keep you alive and keep you safe and protect you and cope with your environment. Like, and also like things that you inherited, like things that aren't even yours that you're caring for other people because you were nurtured into it or because of epigenetics or because of whatever reason that it is. So I would have loved to have someone explain that to me as a teenager for sure.
And for your audience too, like this is also for all of us who are spiritually minded and want to become more intuitive and be able to connect with that, though, that side of life, the DMN is going to just stop all sort of intuitive hits we're getting, any sort of connection we can have with our loved ones, because it takes over and we listen to it and it's almost like we're in a fog. And so hopefully this work and starting to separate it can help people in their spiritual journeys too, as it's like, as I can get into the focus and more silence, then I am more receptive to getting those intuitive hits and to having those communications with my ancestors and everything else that we all want in our spiritual journeys, Let's do it.
It's true.
Yeah, right?
It's so true. It's so true. I cannot channel with any, like before I go into any session, I have to sit there and make sure that anything from my day is completely set aside, that I can be a clear channel. I literally say to spirit, move me from that, my will to thy will, like move me from my ego into the highest and best good of what I'm meant to channel for this person. Because the minute that my DMN starts chatting away, you're not good enough, or you need to go to the grocery store, or your shirt looks stupid today, or whatever it is, then I completely get pulled out of that experience. And I'm supposed to stay in my CEN, my central executive network. Now, is that connected to the nervous system, the CEN?
That it all is connected in different ways. So the DMN is very tight with the amygdala, and the amygdala is also another radar system. So those two are like little fraternal twins to me in like this little effort to keep the human alive 80,000 years ago. And so the amygdala is scanning. And if it sees something scary, it goes, and it says to the CN, are we scared? And the CN's like, oh no, it's just a truck going by. You're fine. And it's like, okay. And then it settles down. But if it finds something that it's like unsure of and it thinks it's even scarier, it kicks it to the DMN. And the DMN's like, nope, we're doing full shutdown. And then the DMN shuts everything down. And then that's the end of it. And you're stuck in your DMN. So that is kind of how it integrates into the nervous system, is it uses the amygdala to either activate a stress response and then the CEN can depress a stress response. But it depends.
This is so fascinating. I love the intersection between psychology, science, and spirituality. For me, it's just so freaking cool. I have loved this conversation. We've tapped into a lot of the DMN, But really, I would love if you could just share like your last thoughts on the CEN. Leave the audience with this hope that there is a life where the CEN can be, in the driver's seat. And when the DMN comes up, like we can rely on the CEN to help us. Like give us some hope after all this.
So, okay, this will sound really trite, but this is something that's been in my head for a while now, and I absolutely love it. And I'll listen to this DMN. I'll be out walking my dog, and he'll be sniffing something, so I'll just be standing there doing nothing. And then I will think, I don't have to think right now. Like, what is required of me in this moment? And there are a lot of different spiritual teachers that speak to this, but like, what is actually required of me is nothing. And we all have those points in our life where too much was required and we were way overtaxed and we were being asked too much and it was overwhelming. And so to be able to have those moments of like, wait, I don't have to think. And when you know that those thoughts are coming from such a negative and automatic and primitive place, it can then just put you into that stillness of the present moment. And it then feels like everything expands. You expand, your awareness expands, and you're not stuck in that world anymore. And so I think we all feel we have to think in order to survive, and actually to not, like, the best way to survive is to stop thinking. We'll get smarter, we'll be able to focus better, we'll have more attention on the things we love. So that would be the thing, is to say, you don't have to think right now. Let it go. It's not necessary.
Yeah, and if the DMN, it sounds like if it's really acting up and you can't get to a place of that regulation or that CEN, you can't tap into that CEN network, that there's things like meditation, mindfulness, support, like so many things that can help.
No, I got a flag. So if you are in that place where the DMN won't stop because you're stressed or you're emotional or going through something really big right now, no, you're not going to be able to meditate. You're just going to feel worse about yourself because you can't meditate. And so those are the times to rely on the stuff that you pull on, the stuff you've known forever. So for me, it's stand-up comedy. If I am in a crappy place, I put on a comedian and it makes me laugh. And so we start to distract ourselves. What is it that you love? I mean, eat the ice cream. My parents laughed when I wrote the book, because I had at about 8 different times, go get a pint of ice cream, because that's like my go-to. They're like, will you shut up with the ice cream? You sound like you're an addict. And I was like, but it's whatever that is for you. Whatever is soothing, that is accessible to you in your life at that moment. Taking a bath, watching stupid videos of dogs. I mean, those are the things you do to survive and get through until you do have more space and less stress. And then you can consider things like meditating.
Yeah, so use your toolbox.
Use that toolbox.
And if people don't have a toolbox, where do they start?
Oh my God, what fun. Create a toolbox. Okay. One of the exercises in the book is you go through and you're like, okay, when I was a kid, what did I love to do? And you list out like 5, 6, 7 things. And what things did I love? Did I love unicorns? Whatever it is, write it all out. Then when I was a teenager, when I was in my 20s, you do it for every step. And then what do I love right now? And then from that toolbox, you'll start to see, okay, stand-up comedy, I'll pull that. That's easy to do when I really can't do anything else. And you just identify those 3 or 4 things and you have them in your back pocket.
Yeah. And maybe scrolling Instagram and TikTok might not always be the best option, but it is an option. Because I can just imagine so many people being like, I'm so stressed, and then like scrolling,
I mean, it can be a bad option, but can also be a great option. Like, there are times if I really can't stop my brain that I'll scroll on Instagram. But what I will do that's a little different is I will like go to the search area and I'll choose a video of a Shih Tzu. I have a Shih Tzu, so I get fed a lot of Shih Tzu videos. And so I'll go to Shih Tzu videos and I'll try to get on a thread that is stupid, funny, fun, light. And I mean, it really works when you need to be distracted.
No, it really does. I watch cooking videos.
See? And so like, that's a good thing. See, we all know ourselves so much better than we give credit for. I mean, there are times when scrolling is really bad for me. And so I stop it. And there are other times when I'm like, I really needed that. And so we all have to listen to ourselves on whether it's right for us in that moment or not.
Yeah, there's something about, I've been doing this for years, like probably like 7 or 8 years, where I will literally watch cooking videos and it is soothing. I don't like, it doesn't make me crave the food, which is really weird. Like, it's like, I don't like, I'm not like, oh my God, now I need to go eat a beef taco. Sometimes I'll save the recipe if I like it, but it's just so soothing to watch all the ingredients and someone mixing it and someone's voice in the background being like, today I'm making chicken tortilla soup with, and I'm just like, yes, I need your regulation through your cooking video. It's amazing.
I love that. The British Bake Off does it for me too. Every year when that comes on, I'm like, finally, media is fabulous again. And I just like cherish every episode.
I binge.
Me
Like,
too.
it's impossible. I wish they released all the episodes out at once. They only do once a week. And I'm like, I need to see pastry week. Why are you making me wait for pastry week?
You know, I actually wait until it's literally Christmas because then that's the end. So I can binge it because I could not do 1 week at a time. I just know myself so bad.
You have a strength I don't have. You have a strength I don't have. Oh my gosh, Betsy, I love you. I love this conversation. I am so excited for people to pick up your book. I'm going to pick up your book. I know that this book is going to be so supportive. I mean, for people of all ages and all backgrounds. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people connect with you, find you, pick up the book, etc.?
Yeah, so books on Amazon. You can do Kindle, audio, whatever you want to do. And I'm on Instagram. I'm a pretty bad poster, but I do post stuff when it's important. So feel free to follow me there. And you can also find me at betsyholmberg.com. There's a website. So yeah, and feel free to DM me whatever you guys want.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we'll link all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much again for just like such a fun conversation, but like so impactful too. I feel like I'm walking away from this just like more enlightened now. So thank you.
Yay, love you, Kat.